Hello, history people, and welcome to tonight's Fiveable live stream on answering stimulus-based multiple choice questions, which hopefully will be more fun than that sounds. It's good to see. We have a question already down there under Ask a Question. You feel free to ask questions about either content, any of the content that we go over that's in the questions that we're going to practice with, or about question answering techniques or how questions are constructed. We have 3 polls, and it'd be really great if people could log in there. So that'll help me and Jed's going to be on screen here in a minute to see what kinds of things who we're dealing with. So if you take a second to do that, maybe drop an emoji in the chat so we know people are out there and where you're coming from. I've got my Fiveable t-shirt on, but it's the North here in Minnesota, so I've also got a cardigan. I've mentioned this before, but I'm all for Fiveable branded cardigans. Hopefully we'll get to that point someday. So people could check in those spots, and I'm going to invite Jed on screen. All right, I see the question there. And you can also upvote questions. So if you go into the ask a question thing and someone's asked the question that you want to ask, then you can upvote it, and the ones that have the most votes will float to the top. So I'll be more likely to see them. All right. Hey, welcome, Jude. California or Colorado. What? Hannah. Nice. Putting the world in world history. I love that. What time of day is it in Georgia? Is it it's like tomorrow, right? Or 5 a.m. It is tomorrow. Wow. This is commitment. Does your teacher know you're this committed to world history excellence? Because I hope they do. Hey, Tanya, good to see you at trivia. 2. Okay, I'm going to invite Jed on here. I'm multitasking. Yep. Oh, great. Great. Oh, Sunny, good to see you again. Seen you in a lot of these. All right. Virginia, New York. Good. All right. And feel free, like I said, to ask any questions. I saw the question in there about answering multiple choice questions. I mean, that is exactly what we're going to do. All right. This is Jed.
Hey, guys. Love seeing representation. California, New York, Arizona. Love it.
Yep. It's a national kind of a deal. So I am going to... Yeah, so Sunny has been in some of these. I just recognize your name. Yeah, that's great. Spent some time together. So I'm going to go into present here in presenter view. There we go. And then I want to make myself small. Hi, Tanya. Here to focus screen. Wonder what that's going to do. Oh, that's what we want. So now we're down here. Great. So let's take a peek. So this is a Fiveable stream. I see there in the polls, we have a lot of people who've been doing this before. It's also very interesting to me to see that so many students are doing these kinds of questions as part of their class tests. And so we're really going to focus on that aspect of what's happening. This is part of the AP test. And when we get closer to the AP test, we'll have sessions on how to handle the AP test, 55 minutes, 55 questions format. And our colleague, Jed and I, Varun, who Jed streamed with before, Varun has an article that's just about ready to publish on the website on answering multiple choice questions. So we're here at Think Fiveable. That's me. I thought I just had that one at the end, but I'm pretty active on Twitter for any teachers out there who are interested in interacting about teaching history on Twitter. I would welcome your comments. #WAPchat. There. And then there's a lot of good stuff on the socials. The kids tell me that there's some memes on the Instagram. I'm less familiar with that. Can you confirm or deny that, Jed?
Yes. If you so our Instagram has a lot of memes that you guys can enjoy at. You can enjoy and just laugh at it, laugh at all the references you can understand. So just check our Instagram, Think Fiveable. Also YouTube, good content there. Key concept review.
We have a weekly schedule now, so there's going to be this World History, AP World, every Thursday at 8 p.m. from now. We have sessions scheduled out until the exam, which is on a Thursday. So then the week after the exam, we'll go over the questions. When we get closer to the exam, we'll have a lot more streams. Also, some that are maybe a little more West Coast friendly. I know Jed is actually at school. His thing is evening. I don't know if we'll be able to get Tbilisi, Georgia friendly, but we did have someone streaming from Germany, so that would have been a little more convenient. So you can see, though, the other subjects that we have. How many folks are taking other AP classes? The kids in my AP World class, a lot of them are taking AP Language, and a lot of them are taking AP Stats, right? We have APES streaming on, you can see when it is here, on Wednesday nights. Yep. Lang. That class, I don't know. How are you feeling about Lang? Class is a beast. My daughter took that class a couple years ago. And I know, but it really is good for you. I can see every year I see kids writing get better if they're in that class. So next Thursday, I know we had a question here from Jude, I think, asking about Unit 6, and next week is going to be all on Unit 6. And I do have one set from Unit 6, and we can talk about Unit 6 content as we go. So here's what we're looking at for today. Feel free to chat away. Today we're going to be looking at just sort of an overview, like I said, of the multiple choice questions. And then I'm going to go through how I write questions. And I know that might seem backwards since most of you won't be writing questions, although I think there are some teachers in the crowd. So that's cool. But I think understanding how they get constructed will help you, and it might actually make it a little stress relieving in terms of how you prepare for them. I'm not sure. And then we have some practice questions, and then we'll have time for your questions at the end or throughout. And you can also respond to other people's questions by text in the chat, and Jed and I will be kind of doing that too off and on. So here's the overview slide.
So, real quick, if you want a refresher, the actual AP test, you're going to have 55 questions, 55 minutes, and either at this point, you're either one or two people, either you're like, oh, I got this, I probably got the groove, or you're on the other side, which is like, oh, what am I supposed to do 1 minute per question? It sounds really, really scary. Don't worry. We'll get you used to the rhythm. So there's that. It's 40% of your score. So if you do well in the multiple choice, so the AP test works in a manner that you don't have to do well in every part. If you're better in test taking, so you can just focus on your attention on doing well in the multiple choice, and you can like have some leeway on the essays, or vice versa. If you think you're not a good test taker in the multiple choice, you can focus on like improving your score in the essay portion, or the short answer. But I recommend just being well-rounded in every area. So that's why you're here right now. And stimulus-based questions are more on set than 2 to 5 questions. So usually there's an image or a text document. I prefer images because I love observing things. And they're just going to ask you about like AP skills, like causation, continuity, and change, compare and contrast, something along those lines, contextualization, stuff like that. So talking about stimuli, they usually come under 2 categories. So one is the primary source. So they are actual accounts during the time. So whether you're in Rome, you're in Latin America, you're in like the Western Front during World War I, whether you're in Europe, in the Great Britain during the Industrial Revolution. These are eyewitness accounts. These are actual accounts, so like they're preserved to like maintain like historical accuracy. They're like the actual stuff. So they're accounts from the time. And then there's secondary sources. Usually they're dated like 1900s, 2000s, where they usually graphs, their texts, their maps, their charts. They're analyzing the history behind it. So you might say like, the growth of the Mongol Empire. That's the secondary source. But a primary source would be like an account by either Genghis Khan or his envoy or someone like that. So you don't really have to memorize the definition, but just by knowing the difference matters when you interpret them for like what's happening around it. So yeah. Pictures and paintings are pretty much primary sources as well. Actually, paintings and pictures are usually primary sources. Usually. They're like interpretation by the artist during that time, like like the trade between this empire and this empire. Usually, yeah. I talk about but it's important to like look at the actual like. There's like a mini like footnote, the not footnote, but like a caption. You can just look at the time and see if it's from a historian or an actual person living at the time. So just be careful about that.
And most of them in the multiple choice section are primary sources. And so I only have one secondary source in here. When I looked at released exams, since AP World went to this format, there's only 3. But in all 3 of those, there was one set of multiple choice questions with secondary source stimulus. So in 2 weeks, I'll be back and I'm going to be doing short answer questions. And those always have a secondary source stimulus with them as well, one of those. So that's kind of, there's usually one set from the multiple choice and one set. Okay, well, we'll practice that. I have one in here. So let's roll. It's the Egypt one if you want to scroll down to it and kind of get started. So what this slide here, and there's a whole bunch of text there. What this slide shows you is how I go through when I go to make questions. And it's also a little bit for teachers who are out there, like, how do you do this? But it's also, I think, for students interesting to kind of see where do these things come from. And I wrote questions for Albert.io for a couple years. It's a little side hustle. So I wrote, I don't know, I think there's about 150 that got published. Some of those are on the pre-1200 time period, so they're now gone. But when I was doing that, it was always much easier to just start with a unit, to find like what topic or content area you want to be, and then find a stimulus and then get more specific from there. So all of the sources that I'm going to show you here, I wrote the questions from. I started just with the general topic, and that's industrialization, imperialism, or revolutions. Those are the 3 big topics in units 5 and 6, and then migration, which I didn't get to. But so those 3, it's like, okay, well, it'd be an image. And then I kind of thought, I used to teach AP Euro, and I've taught world history since 1990. And, it's just like, what are some cool sources? And then a couple things that I want actually looking for something. So you should just kind of know that, like, when you look at the source, you should think, like, what content might the person who wrote this, whether that's your teacher or the college board, or even if the college board wrote it, your teacher still selected it. There's, they're to use. So what's the main idea that this is, about? What is, what's the big idea? What's the big idea here? And so then I have a link there to the CED that's down in the resources for this stream. That's the course and exam description. And if you open that up in a 3rd tab, you can see that some of the answers are like straight from there or loosely paraphrased from there, like the actual content. So then kind of look. So that'd be my second step. And then I would take a closer from that. And this is, and Jed will kind of show you how this works from his viewpoint as a student, but then take a real closer look at the stimulus and see what kind of details are in here. And then what can we do with, what can we do with that? Meaning, like, what details are in there. And then finally, every question relates to one of these skills. Those are the five of the 6 processes. So there'll also always be some sort of skill. You want to kind of look for that. So how would you prepare for such a thing? And sometimes Jed and I both monitor the intercom questions. That's a little walkie-talkie deal that comes up when you're on the Fiveable site, where someone's like, hey, how is your class going? And oftentimes kids will be like, hey, I've got a multiple choice test around. How do I prepare for it? Well, the most important preparation you can do is before the night before the exam, and that's to read. And the reason for doing that is not necessarily what you think. It's not all the trivia. Like, that literally is trivia, what we did beforehand. Like, you don't have to know every single one of those things, but it's just a way to give you an idea of what are some possible things you might use when you write. But the reason you want to read is because the test, a stimulus-based multiple choice test, is mostly reading. When I make one for my class, I aim for 3,750 words. That's about what I figured with our class time and the age of students I have. I teach 11th graders. That's a lot of words, and those are usually 40 questions. So, the AP test itself, you're going to be looking at over 5,000 words. And so the only way really to get better at a test of reading is to read. So doing your reading is really honestly the best advice. But what else though? So what about the night before? Because the night before comes and maybe you've done as much reading as you can. Well, when you're reviewing your notes, or when you're thinking about the content, you want to think, what are the big ideas here and how are there examples that fit into those big ideas? You can't know everything. Like no one knows everything. There's a great tip in the chat there. No one does. Like if I were to reread chapter 36, which is where we are, in my textbook tonight, I've read that chapter 2 or 3 times, I would learn something. Like nobody retains everything. So you want to figure out what kind of categories can you put some things into. So if you do have notes, the best way to get ready, I think, for a multiple choice test that's got stimulus in it is to go through those notes and like code them with color or annotate them in some way that how do we see the big ideas and how do the things connect with each other. So yeah, great. Color coding is good. So I'm going to show you a set of questions here, and this is actually the middle stimulus. If you are clicked over, if you follow the big green button and take a look at the stimuli, we take a look at this. So this is, again, it's not a mystery. This is from the Wikipedia page on industrialization or like textile industry in Britain or something. And so it's a picture that I found is like industrialization is one of the big ideas in this unit, the big idea maybe in unit 5. So we want to have a picture to go with that. And I'm going to show you some questions here in a second where I already have the answers marked so that you can see how the answers, because when someone's writing the question, start with the stimulus and they're thinking of the question type, and then they're going to write the answer next. That's the next thing they'll write is the answer. So kind of seeing that without the distractors can give you an idea of how they work and maybe help you get inside them a little bit when you're doing them. So if we take a look at this, maybe in the chat, what kinds of things do you notice? These are 5 big parts of industrialization, and they're not all in the picture, but how do we see any of these things in this image? Feel free to drop some observations in the chat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you notice about the clothing?
And
yeah, go ahead.
When you look at stimuli like primary source in general, like you don't have to like focus on like if you know that let's for example in this case, it's an industrial age. You don't have to look for everything. You don't have to say, oh wait, there's some machines. Oh, where's the gender dynamics? Oh, it's there. So now you only have limited time. So usually finding 2 or more trends is good, but you can always stay on like at least 1 or 2. That's a safe bet, when you find when you do observations. And the more you find, the more it'll help you once you actually read the questions below the stimulus. So there you go.
Right. Okay. And then you should also pay attention to, oh yeah, there you are. So people are noticing a lot of useful things. And you should also kind of do like a little bit of a reality check, like do you think the factories looked like this? Like it's representing some things, and this guy put it in his book. Does anything seem like not right or like it's not the way it was? Because often these primary source representations are meant to like convey a point. So I have 3 questions here that go with this, and they're loosely based on some released questions. So gender and age be a thing. This is a question that would be the kind of developments and processes question. And this best illustrates language. You see a lot. And that just means is an example of. Right? Yeah, they're not outdoors, right? But it looks like it's light enough to be outdoors. So here, gender is one of the big things that happens in one of the big variables, factors in industrialization. So Oh, our heads are in the way in terms of seeing what, Logan? Like all the choices? The questions. The questions in blue here, like right in the middle. Like, where are our heads?
Oh, okay. Oh, I see now. Because if you look at the boxes, some words are blocked. So let's see if I can read it for you. So I think the part that's covered says C is working class people often live in neighborhoods with unsanitary living conditions and high levels of crime. And I think D was during the 1800s, women, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Okay. Let me think about how to. Yeah, because we're in the bottom left-hand corner. You can't see the bottom of. All right. I'd forgotten about this variable. All right. Well, did you read the? I think what we can do here is exit out. Okay, I'm going to end the show.
Actually, I can just link the. Just link the slides.
Yeah, why don't you guys do that? Jed's going to drop the slide link in the chat. That way we can kind of keep rolling a little better. Okay, sorry about that. I will remember this for next week if you join in. Got that going on. So Jed will drop that in there. Then you can also have them to practice. So one of the things that I wanted to get at, and somebody noticed this, that the man seemed to be kind of in a power position, not quite a power pose, but yeah, Jed's a hero. So that women were working in these factories and children, like that's one of the big ideas, and somebody mentioned that here. So that's one of the things that I was looking for. So when you see that, you always want to think, does it seem right or wrong? So you see a woman working, and a few of you mentioned in the chat, oh yeah, women were working in these factories. That's part of what was going on. They weren't in charge. So then when you see that in the answer, it's like, oh, okay, there it is. All right. The next question is about that sourcing, and it gets at that idea. So when I was looking at this picture, I'm like, this does not look quite right. This looks way too nice. There's way too much space. So then the question would be, what explains that? Well, this is probably why. So if someone's going to write a sourcing question, they're going to be thinking of those hip, happy, hippo things. So if you see the, these choices here, that's, A is historical context, B is audience, C is point of view, and D is purpose. So I did that on purpose. So you could kind of see, you kind of just go through that checklist and think what seems to be influencing this. This is not a super common multiple choice question type because that gets, assessed on the DBQ, and on the short answer question. But it is important, and it kind of helps you to see what's happening. And then there's questions like this, like you might have noticed, where you don't actually need the stimulus, or if you just had the title of the stimulus but not the picture. There's always at least two, usually more, of the questions in the set where you couldn't answer without the stimulus, like the question wouldn't even make any sense, like that last question. It's all about the picture. But sometimes there's questions that are really just about the topic. Yeah, the students all recommend doing that, Tanya. And so that's not something that I had thought, but Jed and Varun and other students who've done these streams are big proponents of doing that. I think especially with text, like so that you know what you're reading for. Yeah, go ahead, Jed.
It depends. For me, when I was taking the test, when it's usually an image, well, you can just take a quick look, and then you can I usually look at the image first and answer the questions. But if it's a long textual document, I would usually I would probably read the questions first. Like I would focus on the statement. I would read the first two because usually like the later, like the third, fourth question usually are connected to like big picture topics, so they're not even related to the image even. So you can do a quick skim, like focus on keywords. So instead of looking at what is the best effect, it's just look at the latter half of the question, like effect or continuity, and then or what feature was prominent in the image, something like that, in the text. So you can do either a quick skim. Either way it works, but I would recommend if it's an image, you can do the document first and questions. If it's a text, usually skim it first and then go back to read. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so. You're kind of looking for those words. Now, you don't have to memorize these things, but that's why I put this here in the lower right. So all the questions are going to be dealing with one of those things. And so it's a lot of different things, but you can look for those keywords. So like when Jed said effect, which would be something that people would look for, well, then that's, a causation question, continuity or change, similar or different. 1 and 3 on this list of skills are going to be those a historian could best use this as evidence of, or use this to illustrate. This is an example of. That's how those work. Right? People are answering questions, asking questions. Just feel free to drop those either in the chat or in the comments there. Yeah, that is, I think, the most common. That illustrates. It's probably the most common. All right. So now we're going to practice. And actually, we have. I'm going to let Jed talk about this, and I'll answer your question here.
All right. Oh yeah, I can see the text. But anyway, so
here are Jed's top 4 tips.
All right. So first, reading questions first. Okay, so I know it's kind of weird. I just said earlier that just skim the text first, but especially for text documents, I recommend reading reading as in mark key terms, like not key terms, key like what they're look at what they're asking. Don't focus on the what is the blah blah blah. Just stare at the latter half of the page and see like either effect, continuity, change, or even what's the main idea expressed. I mean, so you can just say main idea. And so this is where process elimination helps you a lot. So once again, reading is recommended, but if it's a worst case scenario, you can use the image to advantage, especially for the first 2 questions. So this is where you can formulate a plan of attack. So if you look at the image once again, look at the image or document, and then focus on like whatever prominent things you read. If it's talking about social status, let's say gender inequality, you can look if there's an answer choice that talks about like technology or a different theme like culture, you can already exit out because it's not related, it's irrelevant. And the more answers you mark down, like also only mark out like blatantly incorrect options. If you're like torn between 2 choices, that's another thing we'll talk about. But try to like narrow down like in as many confusers as you can. So look for what you're looking for in the question. Yeah. So usually you want identify as many as many trends as you can. So I like using images as an example because they're easier to look at. So let's say it's a map. It's showing the growth of trade in China, let's say during the 1700s. So if there's an answer choice about religion, or let's say it's talk about Neo-Confucianism, or any other irrelevant terms like not necessarily politics, but more in like obvious like opposites from like the main central theme, then you can just start eliminating it. And also look at the wording of both the questions and the excerpt. What I mean when I say that is, you'll like probably in the excerpt, usually in the text document, you're probably going to encounter a lot of technical terms. So you don't have to spend like the next 5 minutes just like, what's like proselytizing, or what's or any technical word. Don't just use the context. Just have the general idea. Don't focus on word per word. Just look at the general idea. If it's a narration, if it's a battle, they just say like, oh, we went in the battlefield. There were and we got some slaves and to trade to the other kingdom. Like get the general gist. Don't focus on each little detail. And same goes for the questions. A lot of kids actually get questions wrong because they, instead of like, there's a difference between scanning, like when I'm talking about earlier, and skimming. Scanning the page real quick is just like saying you see effect, you see like what is it? Oh, actually no, like what is the, like you just focus on the exact keywords. You also want to focus on like, once again, I'm not saying focus on the what is the, like the first few words, but focus on like usually they're in capital letters, so like not except, that means the other way around. It doesn't mean like, or at least like, usually because you're hardwired on thinking like I'm picking the best option, the best description of the document. But there are some questions like the following trends are, let's say the following trends are expressed in this document, except if you didn't read that, if you misread it except, then you'll get the entire question wrong. And we don't want that. So there we go. Also, lastly, we want to contextualize information. What I mean is that, remember when I told you there are you probably already saw those, but whenever a document is presented to you, you'll probably get a time date, like a date, a time, a title of the document. Let's say the Declaration of the Rights of Man, like 18th century. So you want to zoom in on the time period. So like think of everything in that region. So let's say it's talking about the French Revolution. You don't have to worry about anything else in China, in Latin America. Just think about what is happening in Europe, in France during that time. So you can think of the revolution. You can talk about why are they rebelling. You don't have to like spend the rest of the time just thinking what's happening, but just have it ready once you read the questions. When you just know the general idea. So there we go.
Speaking of the French Revolution, so here we have a very common French image. You might have seen this. This was a print, and I've actually seen it reversed. And I've actually seen it with people wearing different colors. So it was the outline was engraved on something, and then the engraving was inked, and then it was printed. So it can be like reversed, like viewed from behind. People seen this image? It's pretty common in textbooks. There's another one that's pretty common too, with a guy on his hands and knees. We have that. So let's take a look here. So people who are asking about the French Revolution in the questions and upvoting that, we're going to take a look at two different French Revolution questions here. So looking at this, just you can drop in the chat there, which of the questions do you think you can eliminate just based on things which ones can we get rid of? You're reading there. So I bolded representation of, so it says game, right? But it seems unlikely, right? So you want to see. And here's the thing, like A is true. The French monarchy was absolutist, but it's not represented in the picture. So this is a question that's looking at like developments or processes, right? That's right, Arav. And why can we eliminate C? The French family was patriarchal. Yep. A, because we don't see a king, right? We don't see gender difference here.
Yeah, the first thing I saw is that there's look at their clothing. It's a hint.
Right. So the answer here is B, and this shows the inequality in France before the revolution. So give yourself a hug if you answered B, and don't worry if you didn't. It is, right? It is B. This one. Okay. We'll take a look at the next question then. Same set. Which one's here? So this question brings context into it. Inferred, because we don't know for sure, about the artist's primary purpose. So this is a sourcing question. My daughter joined in the background there, so I turned around. So again, can we eliminate some here? And then why don't we go ahead, we can put our guesses. What do you think this was trying to do? Pretty famous image here of that. All right. Okay. Yeah. This one's clear. We're rolling. Okay. So we see the peasant bent over. All right. We're doing good. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not celebratory, right? It's not, yeah, for Logan there for A. So yeah, last one was B. Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag here, so I have to be at the purpose. Oh, purpose for this one was C, and then this one here. How did it differ? Like what? I don't know about this question here because what this is asking is how did what actually happen? So the right answer will be something that actually happened that isn't reflected in the image. Right. The peasant and the rabbit are not friends. And in the feudal agreements that governed French country life, peasants were often forbidden from hunting rabbits. And so the rabbit in here is not like a random detail. That's one of the things in the complaints that peasants sent in as part of the revolution. They were angry that they couldn't hunt rabbits and maybe birds. I don't know if any of you live in a household where people try to grow things outside or you try to do that yourself. Like my wife likes to grow things. She does not like rabbits. Yeah. How does your mom feel about rabbits, Tanya? Yep. And so the peasants couldn't hunt the rabbits because nobles like to hunt them for game. But so that one's not right. So peasants did rebel. That is true. A is not true, but B is not true. Or B is true, excuse me, but it is also shown in the picture. So B isn't a difference. B would be a similarity. D is also not true, so you can eliminate that one. Right, so that makes it C, which is true, but not shown in the picture. Right. That's kind of how you might work through this one. Now, this is I think that's a harder question, even though you can eliminate two of the choices. Okay. All right. With D, D isn't true because women took part in revolutionary action. Right. D also is not shown in the picture, so that's correct. So it has to be both things. So that's why it's a bit of a puzzle. So women did. So you might learn about the March on Versailles or women in the crowds in Paris. There were women ripping down the Bastille. So you should know that urban women in particular were really involved in the revolution. Okay. So with the next one then is the this stimulus here you can find, speaking of women, the lampe de gauche. Yes, good. The lampe de gauche, which is in your reading. And then here's the questions. So again, on what I did is I went through here and I just took out the words that Jed might scan for in the questions. So then as you're reading it, you kind of know what to read for. And some of you might have read it already, but other people will probably be reading it for the first time. And on the document that's linked, there's actually a little more of an excerpt. So I'll read this for people who are on tiny screens, or you can read on your own. This is from Lampe de Gauche, who was a French writer. And she wrote this, the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen, it actually continues, in 1791. And she wrote, mothers, daughters, sisters, female representatives of the nation asked to be constituted as a national assembly. Considering that ignorance, neglect, or contempt for the rights of women are the sole causes of public misfortunes and governmental corruption, they have resolved to set forth in a solemn declaration the natural, inalienable, and sacred rights of woman, so that by being constantly present to all the members of the social body, this declaration, oops, I have to go to the stimulus page because my thingy's covering it up. This declaration may always remind them of their rights and duties, so that by being liable at every moment to comparison with the aim of any and all political institutions, the acts of women's and men's powers may be more fully respected, and so that by being founded henceforward on simple and incontestable principles, the demands of the citizenesses may always tend toward maintaining the Constitution, good morals, and the general welfare. Woman is born free and remains equal to man in rights. Social distinctions may be based only on common utility. 2, the purpose of all political associations is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of woman and man. These rights are life, liberty, property, security, and especially resistance to oppression. Right. So let's see what we have here. Does anyone recognize that language? That is modeled on some fairly famous language, like very closely. That sound familiar at all? And maybe has anyone read this in class? All right. Well, that is patterned like exactly on the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. And it was published as a pamphlet. So she just published that thing, just handed it out. It's revolution, man. Woman. All right. So the first question here is a content question. So I guess technically this is the third historical thinking process. Like, what's the argument? So that's just interpreting the document. So which of these things? Are women more capable? Should the status quo be maintained to continue contributing to the economy? Should women be given more? Right? Do you think it only, so we have C or D, that's right. So C is, what makes D different is it's saying it's just politics. Does it seem restricted to politics?
Yep. Usually there's that one confuser answer that has like one word that makes it entirely wrong. So in this case, it'd be solely. So I'm jumping the gun, but whoever answered C, good job. Yep, it's C. Yep.
Okay.
Good job.
Now this is a causation question. So like, what is one of the things that contributed to this? Yeah, and Melissa had dropped that note in the chat too, that words like that, like Jed's saying, extreme language should be a red flag at least. It's usually not true here. So we're taking a look at this. Which of the following was the result of So even though, right, and that's all part of that Enlightenment thinking that's happening in the background. Yeah, so this one is B. And again, these are all things, all these lines all come right from the course and exam description. Yeah, all right, Sarthak. Keeping it real. You got that sweet fiveable thing on your name too. I appreciate that. It's branding. So this isn't the first time that had happened. Right, we're going to do a new stimulus now on industrialization. Here's a graph. So this is stimulus number 3. It's a little bit, it's not necessarily confusing, but it is if you look at the dates, they're not uniformly spaced, so you should know that. Hey, there we go. You've learned about industrialization. You're good to go. And some people do that before they do the revolutions. Other people do it after. Oh, okay. You've learned already. Okay, good. All right. So you might want to just take a look when you get a graph like this. You're kind of looking for what's the general pattern that's like happening here. Like, what's the big idea? Yeah, that will happen with industrialization, Tanya. Yeah. Okay. So take a peek. Now, so this is showing the global dimension of it, which is important, of course. Here. I think Jed made the note in the slides that you can annotate graphs, right? So you can take a second to wrap your mind around it. So it always leads up to 100%. So the total amount of things being manufactured is going up, but this just shows where the biggest percent is. So if you look at 1750, what's the biggest chunk? You know, where things were being manufactured. So we know from the class that China until about 1800 is the center of the world economy. You can see that here. And if it's not China, it's South Asia. But then how does that change? Then what's the change over time? That's always the history thing, right? Okay. Yeah, so where is England in this? So this one's using, there's different words we can use for these places. Right, thank you, Arav. Okay, so if we take a look here, now this question is, and sometimes this will happen with graph questions where it's not asking about the whole graph. So you can even put your hand on the text. Like you can put your hand on the test or on your screen here. And so from 1750 to 1880. So what's the big trend that you might be seeing there? Yeah, because red starts out so small. Fun fact, when the English East India Company first arrives in South Asia, the Mughal Empire is 25 times the size of, England in population. Like for every English person, there's 25 people in the Mughal Empire. Oh, so D says the British development of mechanized textile production. So which thing is going to cause the change? So that means what's the big change from 1750 to 1880? Well, the big change is, right? Yep, so it is D. That is correct. A is true for the beginning of the period earlier, but the question's asking about the change. Right, so industrialization would be the short answer to this question. So that's what it shows. All right, let's do another one. So this question is about the second half of the graph, or another chunk. And that would be, how could you use this data to support one of these conclusions? Okay. We're going to be doing, there's some in Sarthak, there's some in the replays for all of them, but in 2 weeks, I'm going to be back doing, short answer questions, and then Melissa will be doing LEQ, I think, or someone will for that, and we will have DBQ things. Yeah, so 2 weeks I'm going to write some fresh SAQs. Okay. Oh, got some wording problems here. Oh, replace. Yeah. So they're covered. Okay, so C is asking, if you scroll up to Jed, drop the link to the slides in the chat. But so C says U.S. participation in World War I shifted the global balance of power. Right. Yep, that's the key. U.S. was a net receiver of millions of immigrants between 1880 and 1928. Now, what will make this question harder is all four of those things are true. So Jed's taking a push. I don't know, where are you in U.S. history right now?
Yeah, we actually just finished industrialization, so
you're not quite. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're not there quite there yet.
Right, quite there yet. But right. So these things are all true for U.S. history. All right. But then the question is, it's like those. The question here is, it's like an ACT question in science. These will come up like, what thing is actually shown in the graph, right? So like, how could you use the graph? Okay. So which one do we see here? Right. So that's right. So then it's B. Yep, it's a true story. It's going to keep coming. Well, it's also important, like some people haven't had U.S. history yet, but some people have. And if you've had U.S. history or you had some in middle school, the U.S. is in the world, just to state the obvious. And you can always use it as an example in your essays. It can come up in your questions. A couple years ago, I did a DBQ. I was a reader for the DBQ, and the most common outside evidence was U.S. there. So it's not D because of best. Now, immigrants did contribute to North American manufacturing, but this became the world's leading manufacturer. That's what the graph would actually show. Like, so this would be like, how would you use the graph to prove your point? Well, if you were trying to prove the point, and part of your point was that the U.S. became the world's leading manufacturer, well, then this graph would help you to prove that point. All right. Speaking of manufacturing, I found this picture, and I just really like it as a photograph. So that's one of the fun things about writing questions. Look at these sources. Yeah. Oh, covered. Right. Yeah. Follow the link that Jed dropped there, Sarthak, and you can check out. Then you'll be able to see him better. Next time I do this, I'll remember that my head will be down here. So, all right. So let's take a look at this one here. So these are silk. Yeah, so when you look at this picture, what do you see? Just drop some things in there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's possible. Like in the document, the stimulus, you mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm. There we are. Well, what kind of textiles? What are the women working with? It looks like, yeah, there are porcelain bowls, but if you look in the background, well, it's not cotton, though. Although you're right, cotton textiles, you might pair those things in your brain. Yes, we can rush through the title. And again, this is a question. That's right. Those are AM silk, and they're also, those are silk cocoons. Well, the first time I put the image up, the title wasn't there. I just wanted you to look at the image. But it's really important. There's, I learned this from Jed. There's lots of clues in the titles. You can find some answers there. And, of course, you're all, you're excited or nervous or worried when you're doing the test. So you just kind of, you want to get to it. But yes, it will. This is exactly, well, I mean, obviously it won't be on a 5-volt branded slide, but this is just what it will look like. All right. So if we take a look here to illustrate which of the following. So it looks like some people have said they eliminated D, which is true because it doesn't show those things. Again, that's true, but it's not, we wouldn't use this picture to prove that. Okay, what else can we? Yeah, people are saying B or C, right? And so you can eliminate A because we don't see that. We don't know how these women live. Those are some nice dresses, it would seem, but we have no idea how they live, and really it wasn't very good. Yeah, I don't know. The answer for this one I was going for is B, but that might be my bad, and let me tell you why. The second industrial revolution usually refers to steel and chemicals and electricity and kind of the next generation of things. But the machines here, I mean, one of the things you might notice about this picture is it's very labor intensive. Yeah. Yeah, like some sort of spinning mule in the background, right? Right. So we don't see the energy. Yeah. And I actually took this from an old AP question where you could see the energy better. Or actually, I originally had it. You don't need to know what I was looking at. But if you look in the background, right, exactly, Sonny. So this is maybe not the best. This isn't a great question because it's not that obvious because the stuff that you're looking at is in the background. But if you eliminated A and D, that's a good sign. Okay. This is a question that wouldn't make it on the exam. It wouldn't get voted on the committee. All right. How about this one? A change in Japan. So now this is where you might start doing some contextualization if you've got that. Yeah, exactly. That's a sign it's a bad question, is what that is, right? So now a change, when the question is asking for a change, some of the wrong answers will be things that are continuities. That makes sense? So A, is that a change or a continuity? Like, was that true in the past? Right, so silk's a continuity. Like, that was true. Like, it's for you, it's true the whole class, right? You start out and unit 2, you're talking about Silk Roads, right? So that's a continuity. So that means it's not a right answer here. Even though that's true, the Japanese gained, made a lot of the Japanese advancements were built on silk production, using intensifying traditional things, right? Okay, somebody else also iced C, right? Because we don't see an emperor there. Had women been involved in textile production before? And then, so which one of these things then seems like it's a change between B and D? Right? Were women making textiles, like spinning, right? Well, they were. But what's happening here is industrialization. So in some ways, you could probably maybe not doing elimination. You look at the picture and what's it show? Well, it's a factory. So then you might just hit industrialization right away. This would be one where you might not need to do elimination. Sometimes you can see that key term. It's B, intensification of production through industrialization, because women had been doing spinning in the home and cottage industry forever, and they actually were still doing it in Japan at this time. Yeah, right. It was just being done by hand. So the change is that there's factories. All right, one more. Now here's one where the stimulus is completely irrelevant. This is just a knowledge question. How is industrial, although, it tells you we're talking about industrialization. How was industrialization in Japan different? So that's another comparison from Britain when they first did. So again, what you're looking for, the things that are wrong answers are probably going to be things that are similarities. So it isn't A, because that's true in both cases. So how is Japan different? Right. Okay. Did young women in we see young women in a factory here. Did young women work in British factories? All right. So you're eliminating that one, right? Okay. No, women did work in England, yeah, too. So then it's going to be C. Yay, good job. So it's C, that the state, and this is going to be true the later that a place industrialized, the more the state will be involved. Okay, so when we get even later in like communist China, communist Soviet Union, then you get to the extreme of that deal. But it's also true Belgium industrialized, in France a little bit after Britain, and there's more state involvement. So I'm sorry, what are you asking there, Ara? What happened earlier? Well, the state, there is some of that, but it's more indirect. So what I mean here is in Japan and other places, yeah, it did, but not as much. So that's the difference. And what directly invested means is building railroads, building ports, instead of those things being done in private hands, but supported indirectly by the state. So that's one of the kind of big ideas, is that in places like Japan and Russia, that Egypt, that industrialized a little bit later than Britain, that there's that direct investment from the government. Yeah. Well, I think laissez-faire is just an idea, and the state was involved a lot more than anybody wants to own up to. So laissez-faire was an ideology or a notion. It's like businesses wanted it to be laissez-faire, but they also wanted the government to tax imports so that their products would sell better. They wanted laissez-faire, but they wanted the National Guard to come out and shoot at strikers if they got out of hand. So laissez-faire is a little more of an idea, but the earlier countries industrialized, the more that it was private capital in general. Right, exactly, Hannah. So we have that. Yep. Now that's also, it's a mix. It's not about like completely one way or completely another way. There's corporations are a huge deal in Japan and Japanese industrialization. It's not like they're not present. All right. So I don't know. He might be a quiz bowl practice. He was streaming from school because he had to go to, oh, nope, it's that instead. He's on his phone now like a boss. All right, here's an imperialism question, and it is a secondary source question. So here are the things to read for in the other document. And I just have 2 questions for this one. And it's 8 o'clock, and if people need to go, that's fine. But we haven't done imperialism yet, so I'm good hanging around. But just know if you have things or you want to go check out Romanticism with Sherry for European history, you should do that. Oh, yeah. Are you still invited on, or do I need to re-invite you? All right. So those are the things you're looking for here. And so this is from a secondary source. It was a professor, part of his page. It's from a course at the University of Texas that on the history of Cairo. So the Egyptians lacked the ability to finance the building of such large projects as the Suez Canal and the Egyptian railway system. They sought outside lenders who were usually British or French. The British lent the money for the railway construction. The French lent the money for the canal construction under the same terms. A British company had to build the railway and a French company would build the canal. Those companies would then operate the railway and the canal, collect the profits, and use them to pay off the Egyptian debt. The lenders charged interest rates that were so high that the Egyptians would never get out of debt. After the U.S. Civil War ended, American cotton production resumed, cotton prices fell, and suddenly the Egyptians weren't making as much money as they had been in the past. Egypt could not afford to pay off its loans and soon began to default. And on the other document, there's more of that text that might help. Correct. So up here it has the title. Now this guy is a historian. It's worth. There's not much opinion here, so really there's not as much sourcing to do. Oftentimes there's some with that. It's usually based on when it's written. So this was another one. So again, this is the most common kind of question, as some people were mentioning. Right. So yep, we're getting down to B or C. Now, if you look at B, industrialized states and businesses practiced economic imperialism. So again, what's seen it? These are all things that are true about imperialism. So B is talking about economic imperialism. So if you just kind of want to, that's a big term. Like, is that a thing? Is that what this is? And then for C, what you'll notice there is that it's talking about commodities. So the term that comes up, and it was actually in the quiz. Right. So are there commodities being mentioned directly in the text, or is it more something that's generally true of economic imperialism? Like if you eliminate A and D, those are your choices. Yeah. Yep, there isn't. So again, there's no colonies here, right? So when you see that, so it is B, and that's how you would get to the answer. This is economic imperialism. So I was trying to think of examples of economic imperialism. So I knew the Suez Canal was one. So again, this is how, like when you're reviewing, so you don't need to know that story of the Suez Canal. This is one of the things, like when we do the trivia, it's all these super specific things, right? Like, oh my gosh, I don't remember all those things. But you don't have to know all those things. You just have to be able to recognize examples of the big things. So when you look at imperialism, you should say, okay, what are the basic kinds of imperialism? Well, there's colonies and there's settlers and there's economic imperialism. Well, can you recognize economic imperialism when you see it? So you might not know anything about the port of Buenos Aires. I don't really know that much myself. But if you saw what was going on there described, it's a lot like this. And then you can recognize that as economic imperialism. Okay. Yeah, you bet, Logan. Yeah, I want you all to rock this thing. So that's the thing, just always keep focusing on the big ideas. You don't have to know everything. You just need to recognize them. All right, let's peek at this one now. So this is a causation question. So it's asking what was the direct result. Okay, so here's a hot tip. So this is an effect question. So the wrong answers will sometimes be causes in a question like that. At least that's what I do when I write them. I usually put one thing in there that's the opposite. So if it's asking for difference, I usually have one of the wrong answers be a similarity. And if it's asking for causes, one of the wrong answers is an effect, or vice versa. Continuity and change, right. And it's asking for direct result, and that means it's what's going to happen right away. So, Katie, this is my vision, right? Katie, correct that it's not C. Although that did happen, but not until the 50s. You can see why they're mad. So what's this going to lead to? Right, A is a cause. American cotton production increased after the Civil War. And so that led to global cotton prices to fall, which was bad for Egyptians who were selling cotton to pay off the debt. Right. So what's going to wind up happening is then it's going to be B. Right. Go through here. I have one more question. Nope, that was the last one. All right. So this slide I have up as a way for you to kind of think through this. This is a pretty common read secondary source, or primary source. Sorry, I think it was in the DBQ like 11 years ago. Yeah, just dropping truth bombs in the chat again. So you could look at this since you have the slides and think like, how would somebody generate questions for this? That is all the prepared material, but I would like to hang out for a minute or two or whatever and take any other questions that people have. You could drop into I think we've gone through the things that are here. Well, the economic imperialism was the only example that I had from that, but there are some replays on that, and yep, Melissa did one last week, so you could watch that, and then Evan Little is doing one a week from tonight. That's like straight up imperialism, well, and migration, but that will focus on causation. Okay. Yeah, you got this, Sarpak. Okay. So any questions you have in the chat? So here is that session. And you can, hey, Jed, you're back. Are you inside your school?
No, I'm actually outside, just lurking around. So, yeah, good job, guys.
Yeah, it's like California. You can like be outside at school. It's weird. I lived in California for a while, and I was like, this is different. I grew up in Wisconsin. Yeah, what's your question, Tanya? Right on. Sometimes teachers do. Sometimes, I mean, it's usually, I think so do teachers normally watch them? The audience is typically 90% students. It depends. Sometimes I've done ones that are just for teachers, and then it's like, it is nerd-tastic. It is such a good time. But I would say not so much. But like Melissa Longnecker, who was in the chat here, did the stream last week. She's a teacher, and I'll hang out in streams. I always learn something. Oh, I see. Yeah. Sometimes there's teachers, yeah, and I'll also hang out in the chat sometimes. Some of the other like streamers, like Melissa did, and help answer questions. Yeah, and this is not when we get close to the exam. Like there'll be like 100 people.
You get lots more people.
Yeah, and then you need people. Yeah, I know, it's a good time. Yeah, this was a nice size. This 20 some was of how many people were live at any given time. You don't need to be nervous.
You guys are.
Yeah. Which ones were you in last year? Yeah, right? When you get really close to the exam. Yeah, and when Tom Ritchie, like he got to 1,000, I think. Yeah, no, you're on it. Sorry, that the thing AP World was the I hope you come back, Katie. That's great. AP World was the first 5 stream. So our founder, it's her birthday today, Amanda Duhamel. She had taught AP World, and she was like streaming into her phone, you know, like right onto the YouTube. So this is the original subject. So there's a lot of it has a few more people, and then A Push gets a lot of people too, because that's the more people take A Push than any other AP exam, because like everybody has to take US history. So, well, yeah, I would really encourage you to come on back. Oh yeah, right on. You can watch the US history ones. It's going on right now. Caleb Lagerwey is talking about American imperialism, and we just talked about how America is in the world. So you just check that out. Just flip on over. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, that is all we have here tonight. We've gone over a bit, but I appreciate people hanging out. It's great seeing you all. Follow us, stay in touch. Oh, you're welcome. Look forward to seeing folks again. I'll be chatting next week and then streaming. Well, I'm going to end the stream now, so let's go ahead and be in touch. Bye-bye.
Once again, Frozen Thursdays. Don't forget. This time.